Hello and a very warm welcome to this special Independence Day celebrating the 75th Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav with me, Rishabh Gulati, here on NewsX. Over the next several hours, we're going to take you through a fascinating journey to mark where we've come from. Before you start some work, always ask yourself three questions. Why am I doing it? What the results might be, and will I be successful? Only when you think deeply and find satisfactory answers to these questions, go ahead. Now that was the wise advice inscribed into Kautilya's Arthashastra. This was the tutelage he would have given to his disciple Chandragupta Maurya more than 2000 years ago as Alexander of Macedon began his invasion of India. And these are the questions I asked myself for this 75th year of the end of colonial Raj. What are we doing? And the answer was, as in many, to be learnt from the past. So this is what we are dedicating this modern broadcasting medium, this news channel to, the glory that was India and the future that is up to us. Because we can only be successful as a great nation if we both know whence we came and whither we go. Chandragupta would replace the Nandas in Patliputra in the 3rd century BC, and his grandson Asoka, whose lion capital and 16-spoke wheel adorn both our emblem and national flag. That was known as the first golden age of India. And in his first pillar edict, Ashoka wrote this, and I'm quoting, "Thus speaks the beloved of the gods, the king Piyadasi. When I had been consecrated for 26 years, I had this inscription of Dhamma engraved. It is hard to obtain happiness in the world and in the next without extreme love of Dhamma. Much vigilance, much obedience, much fear of sin and extreme energy. But through my instructions, care for Dhamma and love of Dhamma, I have grown from day to day and will continue to grow. My subordinates too, whether high or low or of middle station, endorse it and practice it sufficiently to win over the wavering, and likewise do the frontier officials. For this is my principle: to protect through Dhamma, to administer affairs according to Dhamma, to please the people with Dhamma, to guard the empire with Dhamma." End quote. That was his thought put into action in the first declaration to the service of India and her people, made more than 2000 years ago. 2 millennia later, Gandhi would remind us of the same. He said, and I quote, "A person is but a product of his thoughts. What you think is what you become." So let us think what we are and where we go from here. As the poet Iqbal told us, "Yunan o Misr o Roma sab mit gaye jahan se ab tak magar hai baki naam aur nishan hamara. Kuch baat hai ki hasti mitti nahi hamari, sadiyon raha hai dushman daure zama hamara." It means Greece, Egypt and Rome have all disappeared from the surface of the earth. But the name and fame of India, our country, has survived the ravages of time and the cataclysms of the ages. Surely, surely, there is an internal element in us which had frustrated all attempts at our obliteration, in spite of the fact that the heavens themselves had rolled and revolved for centuries and centuries in a spirit of hostility and enmity towards us. This same quote, exactly the same, was read aloud by Sachidananda Sinha, a journalist and lawyer who was the first chairman of our first Constituent Assembly in 1947. It is in this spirit of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we take a journey now through India's great past. We cover 7,000 years of history from north, south, east and west, live from the soil from which have sprung the origins of a continuous civilization. The more we discuss and showcase today, the more we realize that there is so much these few hours can scarce do a pittance of justice to the scale and breadth of the historiographical landscape, but I'm hoping it's an inspiration to all of you to learn more and to celebrate more and to travel to these places and see and live it all for yourself. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Great India Show on NewsX. I have with us on the broadcast our reporters across the country. Siddharth, my colleague, is joining us from Sinoli, where he's carrying the national flag. In Rakhigadi, Gauri is there. Urvashi is joining us from Nalanda. We have Sujata, who's with us at Lothal, the first Harappan port. Yash is from the capital of the Vijayanagar Empire in Hapi. A fascinating telecast. Let me just quick this off and take it in order of temporal precedence. So we're going to kick off in the great historic Harappan port city of Lothal, where my colleague Sujata is with us. Sujata, if you can hear us, let me kick this off with you. Now, I can see some of the structures behind you, Sujata. Can you describe to us what is there? What do these structures look like? What are the architectural magnificence behind you? Sujata.
Well, definitely, if I talk about the history of this place, Lothal, where I am right now, let me tell you that this is one of the most historic monuments that India has, and it has preserved for almost more than 4,000 years. And apart from that, if I talk about the structure that you asked me for, let me tell you that in the starting of the site, there's a museum that is located. However, the museum is closed right now because of the work process that is undergoing. Apart from this entrance site, it includes of a big river, which is now, of course, dried up because of the climate conditions that can be seen in Lothal, which are quite dynamic and quite variant. Apart from that, where I'm standing right now, this is the upper town. Now, this upper town was meant for all the authorities back then who used to reside here in the Harappan civilization, and they used to basically regard as the officers who used to look in the production of the beads and the ornaments that were traded. Now, this place where I'm walking, this block is called the drainage system. This was used for several purposes, right from carrying water to agriculture to several other uses. Now, this is the drainage system, and also once it was dried up, this is the entrance. Now, the entrance is to the bead factory. The bead factory was very important, one of the most important places back then in Harappa civilization. The reason being because the raw materials were brought back from several parts of the other countries. They were brought here, they were imported from the dock, from the oldest port, which is regarded here in Lothal. They were brought here into the bead factory, and then they were transformed into furnished goods, into finished products, be it the beads or the ornaments or several other jewelry that they made out of the raw materials. And once they were kept here, once they were properly manufactured, they were then stored in the warehouse. So we see that even 4,000 years back from now on, the Harappans were quite aware of what exactly is the procedure to carry on business, right from importing the raw materials to producing them in the bead factory and now to storing them in a proper warehouse. It shows how active and how smart the Harappans were. And once we see that now this is the bead factory, this is the drainage system, this is the upper town. On that end, if I show you, that is the kitchen of the Harappans, and this is a well. We see that these wells are located at several places here, almost at a distance of every 500 meters or 400 meters, we see a well. And these are very old wells, but we see that these bricks, they still remain intact. They show that the strength in the raw materials and the homes that were built by the Harappans that can be seen in these bricks. Though the structure is demolished, but the proper maintenance and the way they were constructed, it really depicts the innocence the Harappans had in constructing and togetherness. The way those blocks there, if I show you, yes, the upper town there, the homes, the blocks are constructed in a very close manner. So right from unity to smartness to emotions,
okay, Sujata, everything
was
I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. You know, I'm envious, Sujata, that you are there and I'm here. Tell us a bit about the port. Because this is what it was. This is the Harappan port city. in Lothal, Gujarat. So what happened to the port? What are the latest findings telling us about, what happened to the port afterwards? When was it in existence? Can you show us around, please?
Well, yes, the port that you're talking about, Lothal, is regarded as one of the most oldest ports that India had, which was used for the transportation of the raw materials and the goods that the Harappans used to produce. Now, the place that I'm standing right now, this is the dock wherein the ships used to come with the raw materials. They were delivered here and then later off taken to the bead factory. As you can see that this was a long river and this was the meeting point where I'm standing, the end of this place. However, we see that it is being said, according to the historians, that the decline in the sea level has led to the port getting closed and no more operating. Well, we all are aware of the climatic conditions of Gujarat, and especially back then when it comes to the climatic conditions of Lothal. Here the Harappans used to get affected in terms of their homes, or be it the loss of life that used to happen because of the climate condition, the natural calamity, the storms or the thunderstorm, or be it sometimes because of the drought that used to take place. So all these natural calamities led to these sea levels decreasing, and one of the most oldest port, according to the ASI, that India had to shut off because of the same. Now, this port is connected to the Sabarmati river, and from where we see that it was connected to the Arabian Sea. So because of that route, the goods used to come from various parts of other valley civilizations. They were brought here, they were manufactured, and later on they were transported to the parts of Africa and West Asia and Egypt. So this was one of the most important monuments, and of course one important dockyard, because if trade flourished in India is because of the port. It's because of the Lothal port that is situated here. However, we see that working and operating no more. But this is the entrance. If I show you, this is the entrance from where we saw that the goods, they were sent off on the ship, and then they were taken off from here. However, because the sea level decreased and the port is no more working, we see a thick wall has been built there. Almost a 7 to 8 layered block wall has been built of bricks, for which the water is now within here and this dock is shut.
Okay, so Sujata, tell us a little bit about the history, because we know the connection to the Harappan civilization, but what was the linkage that was found to the Harappan civilization?
Well, indeed, talking about the history of Lothal, let me tell you that Loth is derived from the word Loth and Thal, which means the mound of the dead. And this is not unusual, because if we talk about Mohenjo-daro, which was a part of the Harappan civilization, then if we translate the meaning of Mohenjo-daro into Sindhi, it means the same. That is the mound of the dead. So we see that Lothal has had a great history when it comes to the civilization that had been here almost 4,500 years back. And also the dockyard here, and there are several other such monuments that have been preserved. And let me tell you about who actually found this Lothal as the Harappan civilization site, and it was unearthed by Professor S.R. Rao in the year 1955. So in the year 1955, he set on to find out where actually can we find the remains of the Harappan civilization, and in the year 1957 he found this place, after which the work started on from 1957 to 1962, which unearthed many structural remains of the Harappan town, which was datable for many coming years. So we see that because of the work of Professor S.R. Rao, there were many such monuments that were found, and one of the main reasons why he could unearth this place and also claim and found out with his research that this is the place where the Harappans used to live was because of the ornaments, because of the shells, the diamonds and several other ornaments that were prepared by the Harappans that were found here, which is why he then claimed that this is the place where the Harappans used to reside. Now, one of the important reason why Lothal was left out was because of the partition that took place in 1947 between India and Pakistan, which led to Mohenjo-daro and also the Harappan civilization coming into Pakistan's side, and also then the Indian government and the Archaeological Survey of India, who is the official agency for the preservation of such monuments, they decided that it was necessary to have some of these ancient remains of the Indus Valley civilization in our country as well. That was the time when they decided that now we need to conduct surveys and also do the research to find out if there are any remains. That is when India was gifted with Lothal. And also, we see that this place was one of the most important and the earliest dock that India had. Now, this port is where we see that it has been operating since 4,500 years ago.
Right.
So, this is a long time, a long way which we see that this port had come, but due to the climatic conditions which led to flooding and drought-like...
Okay, Sujata, I'm being told that you have one of the local historians with you, Smita Mokashi, who is teaching archaeology, in fact. So, if you can just hop across to Smita ji and let's listen in, and maybe she can take us around the site a little bit more to describe it before we open this up to our guests who are with us in the studio. Sujata, back to you, if you can hear me. Go ahead.
Lothal is a tourist attraction for many. Today, we see that there are several such tourists who have gathered here to see this historic place that India preserves. And with this, we see that we have got a tourist with us, and she seems to be quite interested when it comes to knowing the history of India. Let us talk to her and try to know about her feelings now that the Independence Day is approaching. We see that the attraction for the tourist places and the historic monuments that India has been growing. So what you would say in regards to this now?
Yeah, hi, I am Smita Mokashi. I am from Pune, Maharashtra. Basically, I am a software professional, but then I left my job, and during when I was working, actually I did my 2 years masters in Indology, which is ancient Indian studies, and that I did from Tiyak Maharashtra Vidyapit, Pune. While doing or pursuing that course, I realized the importance of history. History was not my so-called favorite topic in my school days, but then I realized that how the history should be, we should look at the history, or we should teach or learn the history, and hence I started conducting lectures in school. And after Corona, when I was actually conducting the online sessions, many of the parents and even the grandparents, they were interested. So now my sessions are like, I'm conducting a session series for 7 to 8 days, which starts from Indus Valley Civilization until 1000 CE. And that covers the entire history of India and all. And fortunately now the interest, as you said, it is so much growing that even now the batches are from 5th standard onwards, till maybe 85 of the year of the age. The people are attending those batches, and they are very much interested and happy to know this history with this particular context. Here I am visiting for the first time, because whatever pictures I am showing till now, today I am very happy I am overwhelmed to touch and actually get the feel of those bricks which I am teaching and telling everyone for so many years. And my basic intentions behind actually conducting this session series is that these Indus Valley people, who are like our ancestors, and I was never in that impression, or rather I never had those feelings that I am connected to them, because history came to me when in my childhood days as in a jigsaw puzzle. It was once Indus Valley, then it was something which is called as Mahajanapadas. And then I realized that these dots are connected, and I belong to these dots. It's a line which is now reaching to me and then my children. So I want every Indian to actually feel and get connected to these people.
So we see that the youth today, what do you think, what is the need, and how is it the need? Is it the need for them also to know about the heritage of India, the rich monuments that India has been preserving for so many years? What, as a teacher, what do you feel? How can this be brought into the minds of the children through the study, like you rightly said? How can it be transmitted to them as well to know about the rich heritage that the country that they live in preserves?
Yeah, actually I think beyond the dates and everything, we should bring that particular point of view these children or to this generation that we are connected to these people. This is very much ours, and if we ignore our history, then we will not be able to learn further. So that feeling and having that emotions attached to history, that is what is very much important, and then only I think everybody will realize the importance of history and they will feel connected, and that is my intention.
And now that we see that...
Okay, Sujata, thanks. Thanks so much, and thanks to the very enthusiastic teacher who studied Indology with you, and she's of course in Lothal, also seeing this on Independence Day. Thank you very much for getting us that. Now just stay with me. Let me open this up. I have Rituraj Jain. He is an archaeology and heritage filmmaker. He's personally been to Lothal, I've been told. Abhijit Chavda is with us. He's a historian. You've seen him many times on NewsX, and he runs a lot of popular online podcasts as well. So Abhijit, let me start with you. Lothal, tell us a bit about Lothal, Abhijit.
So Lothal is an ancient port city that is part or was part of the Saraswati Sindhu civilization, which we call the Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization. And it is said to have been established somewhere around 5,000 years before today, around 2,800 or so BCE. And it was a major port of this era. The archaeologist who discovered this site, like the lady was saying, Dr. S.R. Rao, he actually wrote a paper comparing the port of Lothal with the modern port of Visakhapatnam. And if you see the paper, you will see that the dimensions are pretty much very similar, and the port of Lothal compares rather favorably with the port of Visakhapatnam. So which tells us that 5,000 years ago, or approximately 5,000 years ago, our ancestors had the best and most advanced technology in hydroengineering and geoengineering in the entire world. It was so advanced at that time. It was a port with a massive capacity. It was connected to the ocean. It was connected to the various river systems. And this location is also close to where the ancient river Saraswati
Abhijit,
used to
I want
flow.
to stop you because this is what fascinates me. Of course, I read about what was happening when Mohenjo-daro was discovered. For people watching the broadcast, when Mohenjo-daro was discovered, the bricks from that site were considered to be of modern origin. So they were used as ballast for the Kabul-Multan railway by the British. Okay, because they thought these are all modern things. So Abhijit, literally what we are seeing on our screens is the pottery. All of it looks, pretty familiar, as in it's difficult to imagine that the bricks, and I'm showing the sewage system, the drainage systems, the bathing systems there, the port systems, they almost look modern. I mean, they are right angles, perfectly straight. The bricks is something like, my houses are built out of. It's unbelievable that this is 5,000 years old.
So one of the characteristics of the Saraswati Sindhu phase of our civilization is the incredible standardization of weights and measures. You go to Haryana, you go to Birana, you go to Rakhigari, you go to Mohenjo-daro, you go to various parts in southern Afghanistan, you go to Madhya Pradesh, you go to Lothal, you will see the same standardization of the sizes and dimensions of bricks and weights and measures and other things. Even the buildings are built according to these standardization. So that is the thing. There was incredible sophistication of technology, standardization of weights and measures, which tells us one of the reasons we are able to understand this was single civilization is because the standardization is seen everywhere. The area of the civilization is essentially larger than Egypt and Mesopotamia put together. Indus Valley or Saraswati Sindhu is greater than that in size.
Yeah, because we are showing some images, paintings that have been drawn of recreations. I mean, this is, okay, let me put it this way. When we talk about Lothal, we are talking about slightly before the Great Pyramids at Giza. Okay. So this is before Egypt. This is 2,500 years before Alexander of Macedon. Okay, it's again more than 2,500 years ago before the Roman Empire starts off, and Greece and all these things. We're talking about 2,000 years before all of this, and the civilizational cities, the architectural drawings which you can see on your screens and you can see on the ground. Let me quickly get Devang into this. Rituraj, you've been there on the ground here. Okay. Now, we know that Lothal was a trading port. It wasn't just for transportation. They were trading with Sumer and Babylon. So, we're talking about, the Euphrates and the Tigris and the Sumer civilizations, because the Harappan seals and pottery have been found that far away.
I think it's, really incredible. I remember we were filming a documentary in Lothal. What really stood out was this impressive network. It's a port city, and it really so overwhelming, this entire experience. when you're standing right there, in vast expanse, the dock, that you see, it's brick lined, pumped house, where it all makes for a very coherent, a very logical narrative, how trading would have happened, how ships would have parked at the dock and, taken up to the warehouse, and trade to and fro would have been carried out. Lazuli, studded jewelry, that we now see in the museums, all those ornamented bangles. It really, we were really dumb, saw the twin skeletons there. It's a very complex narrative, a very complex Lothal finds itself in, and of course it all is very intricately linked. Was one of the major reasons that put India on the world map. It was one of the, as archaeologists around the world today recognize it to be. So this particular I think this particular facet of Lothal is something truly IVC. We have a lot of Saraswati Indus Valley civilization sites in the country today. But what is that you actually have that tangible element here.
Yeah, the touch and feel of it. I know, Rituraj, this happened to me. I was this young student. I discussed this with Abhijit a few months ago. And I was studying in England, and I had gone to Pompeii, okay? And now Lothal is 2000 years before Pompeii, okay? And I remember a local guide wanted to ask me about sites in India, and I had never been, okay? So, I mean, if you just see this, and Sujata is there, she's experiencing it, that touch and feel of experiencing it, how do we now present, how do I encourage people watching the broadcast to thinking, we've been to Rome, but we should also go to Lothal? Rituraj.
Absolutely. In fact, we are all too caught up in, I don't know, I wouldn't say traveling abroad, but it's a lot of things way back, here at home that we should be, visiting, considering. And Lothal happens to be one of those places you just need to pay a visit, that's all, there's not much that you need to do there. Once you are there, you look at the vast vista, you look at that landscape, it leaves you dumbstruck completely. Again and again, but that is what it leaves you with,
Okay, for people watching this broadcast, Lothal is just an hour-and-a-half drive from Ahmedabad, okay? So it's not completely out of the way, it's easy to get to, and it's a well-developed site. As you can see, there's a museum there, there's restroom facilities, it's reasonably well developed. Of course, it can be better, which is why we are here to re-put it on the map. But before I quickly take a break, let me get Abhijit back in. Abhijit, just for our viewers watching, so we're talking about historical context. We're talking about just before the pyramids in Giza. So this is before Khufu is building his pyramids. A few hundred years before, this is parallel to the birth of civilization in Babylon, in Sumer, and other places. But we're talking about a vast area. You said this is bigger than Egypt. If you look at Harappa, which is towards the northwest, Mohenjo-daro, and of course come down to Lothal and other sites which are still in modern day India.
Indeed, if we actually take a look at the geographical extent of the Saraswati Sindhu phase of Indian civilization, it is larger than Egypt and Mesopotamia put together. And if you look at the age of the civilization, you can find the oldest site, which is in Bhirana, which is almost 9,500 years old. And there is an ancient city that is submerged under the ocean of the Gulf of Khambat, just a few kilometers away from Lothal. And that city was built when the ocean levels were much further. So that city would be at least 10 to 12,000 years old. And it was a well-built, well-developed city, just like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, or Rakhigarhi. So which tells us that our civilization must be 15, 20,000 years old, and it was the most sophisticated civilization and the first civilization that we know of in human history. So that is the context we have to understand. We're not talking about 2,000 years before Alexander. We're talking about 10,000 plus years before Alexander. That's how far back it goes. And Lothal and Dholavira, etc., are also not that well excavated. They may be far older than what we have found them to be thus far, because a big port city doesn't appear
just
overnight.
Look at the photographs. This is open to the elements in this day and age. Can you imagine that what you're watching is 5,000 years old? It's mind-numbing. Abhijit, Rituraj, this is only the first part of our journey, tracing more than 7,000 years of Indian history. We've started in Lothal. Up next, on the other side of the break, we go to what you just mentioned, which is being now investigated as one of the root places of the Saraswati civilization, which is been an anathema in historians of the past to discuss the Saraswati civilization. But a new wave of historians, a new wave of literature is coming out.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.